Welcome to the Intimate Marriage Podcast, where I teach educated, successful couples how to have incredible, passionate relationships so that you can stop compromising and start feeling fully alive in your relationship. I'm Alexandra Stockwell, aka the Intimacy Doctor. I'm a physician, a relationship and intimacy coach, and I'm an intimate marriage expert. My husband and I have been married for 27 years. We have 4 children and full professional lives, and we've created an amazing marriage. I've shown hundreds of couples how to do so as well. So if you want to deepen your understanding of your own relationship and learn to access new heights of emotional, sensual, and erotic intimacy, you're in the right place. I will show you how. Now, let's dive in.
How do you feel about your desires? Do you embrace them? Do you know what they are? Are you comfortable sharing them with your partner? I'm going to talk about that in detail today. But before I get into it, I want to share what somebody wrote me after she and her husband went through the Aligned and Hot Marriage program. That's my signature program where I basically give you the education that just isn't taught anywhere and isn't modeled. And so where would you learn it? It's an education that's essential for learning how to be with yourself and be with your partner so that you can, well, in the context of this discussions, where you can know your desires and share them in such a way that you both are enthusiastic about supporting them. How to ignite the spark, create more closeness and connection, and how to navigate the landscape of vulnerability and awkwardness in such a way that you can open your hearts and open your bodies. All right, so this woman, after she and her husband went through the Aligned and Hot Marriage program, wrote to me, as a result of going through the Aligned and Hot Marriage program with my husband, I learned how to be brave. And we learned how to discuss things so that we can make what is already good in our relationship even better. I'm so happy for this couple, and I'm so happy for you if you take the steps to create that as well. You can go to Aligned Hot Marriage to enroll. The link will be in the show notes. Part of having these kinds of conversations on how to take what's good and make it really great in your relationship requires you to know what your desires are and to be willing to share them with your partner where relevant. I want to establish super clearly that we do not choose our desires. Typically, we judge ourselves or our partners for what the desires are. Society judges us. There are things that we want that someone like me shouldn't want that. It's so complicated. But one thing that's clear is that we do not choose our desires. They arise from our unconscious, from our heart. But the point is that our desires are what they are. And the only place where choice, freedom, and volition comes in, sovereignty, is in choosing how we respond to what our desires are. So you can have a desire that is taboo. You can have a desire that's super straightforward. And in either case, you didn't choose it, but it is up to you how you respond, whether you take action or you don't take action, and how you take action. That's where choice lies. Now, one of the things about desire, which I want to really focus on today, is that desires evolve. They grow with us. They have a life of their own and evolve too. And one of the causes of disconnection and loneliness in long-term, basically functional marriages is when you don't update for yourself what your desires are. And most significantly, you don't update that with your partner. I have a funny, not so important, but very clear example of this, because when Rod, my husband, and I got married, I remember cooking a dish with eggplant in it. I don't even remember what it was, but I don't think I was making baba ganoush. I probably was frying eggplant. And my husband actually is not a picky eater. He's really not, but he was very clear that he doesn't like eggplant. So I thought, okay, no problem. And basically, often when we were in restaurants, I might order eggplant parmesan. I would, if it was at a buffet, I'd enjoy eggplant because I do like how it tastes. And, I like ratatouille, whatever. It wasn't a problem for me not to cook eggplant at home. And somebody gave me an eggplant from their garden after we'd been married, 15 years. And so I was cooking it, planning to just serve it to myself and the children. My husband came and looked over my shoulder to see what I was cooking. He's taller than I am, so that would be an easy way to do it. And he said, "Oh, that looks so good." And I was confused. I thought, what is he looking at? And then I thought, well, maybe he doesn't realize that I'm cooking eggplant. He does very little cooking and might not recognize the food I'm using. The point is that when we first got married, he didn't like it at all. But sometime along the way, he clarified for himself that he did like it. But it never occurred to me to ask him because he told me he didn't like it. And it obviously didn't occur to him to update me. It just was not part of his experience of his emerging desire to give me the headlines on it as it evolved. He didn't even remember exactly when it switched. He just was clear he really liked eggplant. And so since that time, I serve eggplant with, I don't know how often, when it's in season, and I make it in a variety of ways. And I get this special pleasure serving it to him because I always remember that for years I didn't serve it because he didn't like it. Now, it shouldn't have been that surprising to me. It was, I think, because he was so definitive that he didn't like it. But we all grow and evolve, and our preferences and desires evolve with us. Some of our desires, some of our favorite things, they're the same from when we're little boys and girls. There might be a sport. I fully expect my 12-year-old, who has just been totally in love and devoted to baseball since he was 7 when he started playing. I don't know how much he's going to play in the future, but there's no way that he's not going to always have a love of baseball. But it comes to other things like foods we like, cuisines we like, how we want to spend our time, what our priorities are in terms of career, family, time alone, learning new skills, travel. That evolves. And what also evolves is our sexual preferences. There may be things that you enjoyed in the bedroom when you were 25 that you continue to enjoy at 35, 45, 55, 65, 75, and 85. However, there's something in the realm of sexual desires where we love variety. So even when we really enjoy something and don't stop enjoying it, it doesn't remain as fulfilling as it may have in the past. So with each phase of life, as our bodies grow, and just with making love multiple times, hundreds of times, we can get a craving, a desire for something else. The other thing about all desires, but I want to specifically focus on sexual desires right now, is that they're really individualized. And so you may love doing something that's part of your sexual repertoire with your partner and has been for years, and you may love it as much as you did before, and your partner may too, and your partner may not. Or it may be that when you were younger, you didn't really feel internal permission to have certain desires, and you've become curious and attracted to certain things, but they were part of the culture of your sex life. And so it never came up. And so then your partner might be really surprised if you've never used any toys in the bedroom that actually you really want to explore that. Or what comes up more often is two people who have been having vanilla sex for a long time, meaning standard, not a lot of play with power dynamics and various energetic differences, meaning in the intensity of various kinks with just more pressure, more domination, more submission, whatever it is. But in my experience, it's not uncommon that one person is actually drawn to exploring that and the other person had no idea. Now, when you explore it, does it mean you're going to love it and want more play with power dynamics? Who knows? But one of the greatest things about sex is that it's a playground for exploration. So what I really want to give you in this episode is, first of all, the clarity that you don't choose your desires. You just choose how you respond to them, which may involve sharing them with your spouse. It may not. You may approve. You may not. Like, all of that is very rich territory to explore once you're clear on what your desire is, because it is what it is. And then the next thing that I really want you to take from this episode is that each of us evolves and grows in so many ways. I mean, if not, we're stagnating and starting to deteriorate. So when it comes to growing, evolving, shifting priorities, shifting what delights you and lights you up, well, that evolution is going to be reflected in your desires as well. And that is true in the most material desires, like maybe you love a sports car, but now you want a Tesla family car. Who knows? The point is that there's an evolution. Or with shoes, what kind of shoes you want to be wearing. And certainly when it comes to how you want to be touched and how you want to communicate with one another, there comes a time often when a lot of life has worked itself out. You've had your ambition, you've had your goals, and you've achieved them. You are where you've been aiming to be in your career. You are where you've been aiming to be in terms of creating a family and the kind of home you live in. And now you have more desire in terms of affection, intimacy, connection. It's like there's internal spaciousness, and now those desires are the ones that are arising. So knowing that desires evolve, the first thing to focus on is learning how and being willing to open up and share them with your spouse. So if your food preferences have changed, if you like spicier food than you used to, or you want food less spicy than you liked, communicate that. It doesn't benefit anybody not to update about that. So for the different areas of your life that are straightforward to share, do not presume erroneously 100% of the time your partner is a mind reader. Your partner may have excellent intuition, may even be a bona fide psychic, but that does not mean that they're going to know everything about how you're growing and evolving and what your desires are. So update about those as you yourself become aware of them. Sometimes our desires change, much like the frog in the water where the temperature is slowly increasing. Not that then we are going to die. That part of the analogy is not relevant, but what I mean to say is that our desires can evolve in such small, incremental, evolutionary ways that we don't even really notice it until something points out the stark contrast. It's much easier to recognize evolution when it's stepwise increases, and we can very clearly see the comparison from how I am now to how I was 6 months ago or 2 years ago. But when it's gradual, sometimes we miss it. So as soon as you become aware, share it with your partner. Maybe you always preferred to take longer vacations, and now you'd like to take more vacations, but shorter ones. Or maybe more vacations just as long. The point is, as your desires have evolved, be sure to clarify it for yourself and share with your partner. And then the thing that I want to really emphasize when it comes to sexual desires, which is the arena where so much evolution happens in terms of what feels good, what you'd like to discover about yourself, and the kind of experiences you want to be having with one another as you touch and are touched. This requires communication before, because if you've never had any kinky experiences together and you just suddenly start doing something that involves more intense sensation and you haven't communicated about it ahead of time, that's like doing something without consent. It's offensive and inappropriate, and it is not going to work. But if you have a conversation ahead of time and say, I'd like to explore this or that, and you clarify it and you get clear what you're both a yes to and where the boundary is, or that you'd like to try a new position where you don't need to establish so many boundaries, like whatever it is, that you share what that is, and then you play, you explore, you touch in the ways you've spoken about, and then afterwards, if you have a really great rapport, you can do it as you're lying on the pillows afterwards. But if you don't have a really great rapport and an ease talking about sexual matters, then wait until the next day, or anyway later, once you're dressed and there's a different vibe and you're on to other things, and then thank your partner for exploring with you in that way, and share what worked. And maybe you'd like to do it again, or maybe you'd like to do this but not that, or maybe it inspired you to realize that you want to try something else altogether or expand on it. The point is, be collaborative and express your desires, and at every step of the way, check in with one another. Now, my husband enjoying eggplant, I didn't really need to, great, that was information that I could use or not when choosing what to cook. But when it involves both of you, like the kinds of vacations you're going to take, or the kind of sex you're going to be having, then you definitely want to ask your partner, are you up for this? Is this going to work for you? That's beforehand. And afterwards, did you enjoy it? Is there anything you'd want to do differently? What would make it better for you? This is something that really just isn't spoken about in general. But the bottom line here is that desires evolve and shapeshift. And sometimes we are chameleons where we just go with what's familiar, even though underneath we want to go in another direction. And in order to really be fulfilled with one another, in order to enjoy uncompromising intimacy where you're both self-expressed, authentic, and true to yourselves and one another, that means paying attention to the new desires you have, and instead of just compartmentalizing them and ignoring them, shoving them under the rug, and instead of wanting them and expecting your partner to know it without saying so, and then building resentment because they're not touching you differently when you want to be touched differently. Instead of all of that mess, go ahead and share what it is that you desire. And listen to my tone, because it's important. I'm slowing down. I have a soft volume and a gentle tone. That, I mean, if it's not your personality, if you're like a straight shooter and you say things the way you say things, then, don't pretend to be me. Be you as you express yourself. But I just really want to call your attention to the fact that, especially when it comes to sex, if you want something, if you want more foreplay, if you're a woman and you just want more attention on your clitoris before there's any intercourse, that's a very reasonable circumstance and request. There's a way that you can say that makes your partner feel unskilled and dumb, like he should have already known that. And all these times he wasn't doing it, even if you don't say it, that can be in the air if you speak with a kind of managerial tone, like you're giving a performance review. So don't do that. Find the way that is really respectful and typically a little slower and softer, where you're really focused on feeling connected with one another as the context for then expressing that you'd love to try something new together. Want to join me? Want to do it together? So have some fun with this. And if you're up for it, just start writing down some of the ways that you've changed in the last 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years with respect to your desire. What feels great to you? What do you love? What lights you up? What makes you feel fulfilled? When you consider that and make some notes, I think you're going to have some really good stuff to share with your partner. And I guess the final thing I'll add is that you also can share these things as a way of sharing who you are and being seen without even necessarily making any other changes. Just sharing ways you've grown and evolved without a plan to do things differently. That also can create a lot of connection and set you up to explore new ways of doing things in a way that really feels inspired, connected, and passionate.